is Rogers TV.
Now, technology is always improving, and we are always coming up with new and improved ways, supposed to be improved, ways of doing things. But when it comes to knives and the technology involved to cover an edge to keep it safe and protected and keep it nice and sharp like you want it, leather for me is just about the best, and for a lot of other people. Leather's been used for tools and different uses for thousands of years, and it's just a beautiful material. And today we're going to use it. We're going to work the leather. I'm going to show you some of the tools involved to make a couple of knife sheaths and some straps. It's going to be exciting. Look at this beautiful piece of veg tan leather here. Just prime stuff, and we'll talk about that and learn more about it in a minute. But first, the context of what we're doing. If you haven't followed last week's episode of the Newfoundland Hobbyist yet, you need to head over either to your recording device, your DVR or whatever, or over to YouTube. You can search my name, Kyle Noseworthy. You'll find my catalog of content, including part 1, last week's episode of the Newfoundland Hobbyist, of this build, which is a ceremonial dagger. Now, as it so happens, this dagger becomes 2, and it's going to be carried in 2 separate locations until they finally mate. They come together and they spend the rest of their life like that. But we need to make 2 sheaths that can be carried by a bride and a groom in a tuxedo. Let's get to work. Now, vegetable tan, usually shortened to veg tan leather, is some of my favorite. Just beautiful. It has a finished side, like a skin side here. Then on the inside, like a suede or a rough finish, which is usually not too rough. This is about midway. You can get it in a higher grade finish inside than that, and you can get it much rougher, more like furry, fuzzy as well. This is how it looks. It's just beautiful. It has a light vegetable tan. So instead of being like a white, like a rawhide white, it's this nice off tan color, which is just lovely. Now in terms of thickness, leather is measured in ounce weight. It's just how it's done. You kind of have to get used to the numbers, but a lot of sites now are listing in millimeters as well. This is 6 to 7 ounce leather. I usually prefer something right around 7 ounces. A lot of knife makers and stuff use 9-ounce leather, but I find it gets too thick and chunky. Now they always give a range because it's not perfect. You'll find some spots of your hide are a little thicker and some spots are a little thinner, just how it runs through the machine, of course. It's not perfectly even, but you get pretty close. But I find that 7-ounce range is a sweet spot where I can use it for straps, and I can use it for belt loops, and I can use it for other projects, knife sheaths and straps. It's just that sweet spot right in the middle. You can use it for everything. Now when you're working with leather, it helps to have a template because that material is so susceptible to damage. And it's not bad when it's done and it's oiled and dyed and finished. But here now, anything you do, like if you mark it with a pencil, you aren't really getting that out in your final finish. It's going to be there. So you have to know exactly where you're marking. You can't roughly sketch something out like you can on wood and, roughly cut and then sand off your pencil marks and stuff. You don't have that option. So you got to do it right. And also because these materials are pricey. You have several $100s for a hide like this, and you want to take good care of it. So templates are the way to go. I've designed a simple template here we're going to work with. We're going to start with the bride's piece first. That will be a simple slip sheath. We'll have a welt up to here. It'll be nice. Now when you're marking on your leather, you're drawing out your template. This is not bad because everything's pretty symmetrical. But if you're doing anything that's not, make sure you put it the right side up. I've ruined sections of leather time and time again because you put it the wrong way. Lay the template down, you end up with a left-handed sheath, or the wrong side out because it has a right side up. So make sure you draw it out like that. Now when it comes to working with leather, your blade almost can't be sharp enough. I like, you want a nice thin blade because if that has any thickness, it wedges in. It needs to be very sharp. So an X-Acto knife blade, utility knife blade like this, is real nice. And even they, after so many cuts, they start to lose that crispness. You start pulling at your leather, your cuts aren't nice and tidy. Time to get rid of them.
King Canada has been bringing quality machinery, tools, and equipment to the North American market for over 38 years. They offer innovative products for all applications, for the industrial and commercial setting, as well as the homeowner and hobbyist. King Canada is a sponsor of the Newfoundland Hobbyist.
Now the groom's knife is going to be worn in a body sash like this, or at least that's what I figure. I can't think of a better way other than incorporating a bunch more straps that's unneeded. So I have a beautiful 1/4-inch ring here, and we're just going to thin out this strap. This is a 1-inch strap here. Then we'll make a holster for that sheath as well that will attach to the same ring. First thing we have to do is thin out the end of the strap. Now there are a number of different tools and gadgets available that you can use to thin leather. This one here takes little replaceable blades. You can see they just screw in there and you can just kind of scoop out the material. Now you have to be careful with it because you'll scoop right through the front side nice and quick if you're not careful, but works very nice. Again, the sharper your blade is, the better it works. I could definitely take a lot more significant digs than I am, but I'm kind of hooking at it. Don't want to scoop through the front. Now right here is a tool I recommend you pick up. This is called an edge beveler. It's not absolutely essential, but you can see you have a little flat foot here. Actually, it's kind of rounded. You kind of control your angle to control the depth of cut, but we have a sharpened edge inside of here, which is a little tricky to sharpen. We won't cover that today. But this does a really cool job at beveling edges, just like it says, because your edge just fits nicely up inside this groove here. Now, the edge beveler here was a recommendation. I like it, but you can do it without it and get great results. However, the edge groover, and notice this one has that central cutting hole, and then you have an edge guide here. You cannot do, or I haven't seen it, you cannot do nice stitching that'll stand the test of time without one of these. And they're not expensive, they're not too hard to maintain, but you got to have one. Now I'm just going to make a stitch groove. I don't have a lot of room because of the way we designed this sheath. Not a lot of room at all. Just this little border window. But you can see how this tool cuts that perfect stitch groove. Just awesome the way this tool works. And it lets you put your stitching in a nice straight line, because otherwise your stitching will be all over. Something else it does is it recesses your stitching beneath the surface. That's important so it doesn't get torn up. Right here we have an overstitch wheel. Now this has a couple uses. I use it as my stitching marker, and then I drill my holes. but you can also use it as, it's called, an overstitch wheel to kind of indent all your holes and to go over the top of your stitching after to kind of knead everything down in a uniform. Just helps with that uniformity. But I use it as kind of a template guide. Look at that, nice even indentations for me to drill out.
From brutal offshore drilling platforms all the way to the homeowner and hobbyist, Lincoln Electric's 125 years of experience provides the quality you need to get the job done right. The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by Lincoln Electric.
Now it's time to lay some dye on our leatherwork. We do that before stitching. Just a habit. You don't have to, but in the case of if you have white stitching or bright colored stitching and you go ahead and dye it after, you'll stain up your stitching. So you want to get in the habit of dyeing pre-stitching. Everything else done, but pre-stitching. Now I always applied my leather dye with daubers, wool daubers. You can buy away at those, they're pretty cheap. But within the last year or two, I've become committed to airbrushing. Just works better for me. I can do a lot finer work. I can do designs and fades, and I can custom mix colors, and I always get a nice even dye. Just, it works better for me. Now that's one of those things that is absolutely just a matter of preference. You can get just as good a results without airbrushing. And of course, once you add something like airbrushing in, you need an air system, you need the airbrushes, you need cleaning products, all that kind of stuff. So it's not like it's definitely not one of those must-have things. You can definitely do without it. And I'd probably recommend doing without it to start off. Now it is time to stitch our leatherwork, and I'm going to use a saddle stitch. That's my most commonly used type of stitch, and I just want to show you how a saddle stitch works. And we have one length of thread with a needle tied on each end. Remember, we have our holes drilled through there. So what we're going to do is pass through that first hole. So let's say this is the sheath, okay? You're looking down on it edgewise. You pass through the first hole, and then you take your needles and you go back through the second hole, and back through, and back through, and you just keep going this pattern with both needles passing back and forth through the same hole. And you can draw tight on every stitch, or you can, I find you can stitch 2 or 3 at a time before you need to kind of get a grip and pull the stitches tight. But that's how a saddle stitch works. Now my wife does 99% of my stitching these days. She has for the last year or so. I'm going to tackle this one tonight, get this knocked out. And with the number of hours that I've put into this project, it's only fair that I put the finishing touches on it and close out this beautiful build for the bride and groom. We are so close to being done this build. The next step right now is to use an edge coat. Phoebings are my favorite products. I'll use a wood dauber for this. This product is like a very, very thick paste, and you just brush it on and it dries like a hard shell, and it's bright and shiny, and it's so thick it coats in all of those fibers. It's just a beautiful product. It can be a nightmare if you aren't good at applying it, or if you drip some on the face of your sheath, that would be bad. But just a beautiful product once you get used to it and you get good at it. Back in the spray booth again, in my grinding room here. We are at just about the very last stage of this project, and what I'm going to do now is add a shine product, a sheen product to the finish of the leather. A lot of times with hunting products and things like that, hunting knives, fixed blades, I use an oil finish which will give it water resistance and more of a matte finish to the leather. It kind of fits the environment a little better. This is a dress piece. This is a fancy piece. And I want to add a shine to it. But we are just I'm gonna spray apply this. And you can layer this up nice.
Century Welding is an online Canadian outlet for premier welding and cutting machines, equipment, and related accessories and replacement parts. Shop for your welding machines and accessories, consumables, and even your safety apparel. The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by Century Welding.
This wedding is a celebration of family, specifically the blending of two families that have been separate up to this moment in time, but now will be united from this day forward, blending their different traditions, styles, and in turn strengthening the family tree. Philip and Laura have chosen a dagger as a symbol of their marriage through the joining of these two halves. The Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. These two halves each represent both of you, all that you are, and all that you both will be. Select pieces of their dagger have very significant meaning. The handle is crafted with 5,000-year-old oak, representing their enduring and never-ending love for one another. The pins in the guard portray the Holy Trinity and their deep-rooted faith in God. Philip and Laura, you may now unite your blades into one. Now that the blade is whole, Laura, please place the blade in the sheath that Philip is carrying. This sheath portrays God and how He will protect, guide, and cover you both with His love, peace, and grace throughout the relationship years together. and bring you both closer to each other and closer to Him. For as much as Philip and Laura have consented together in holy wedlock, have witnessed the same before God and this company, and have declared the same by the joining of hands, I pronounce that they are now husband and wife in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Those whom God has joined together, let no man put asunder.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com.